The Pearl, Chapter 3, page 46. When the doctor had gone and all the neighbors had reluctantly returned to their houses, Kino squatted beside the little glowing coals in the fire hole and listened to the night sound, the soft sweep of the little waves on the shore and the distant barking of dogs, the creeping of the breeze through the brush house roof and the soft speech of his neighbors in their houses in the village. For these people do not sleep soundly all night. They awaken at intervals and talk a little and then go to sleep again. And after a while, Kino get up and went to the door of his house. He smelled the breeze and listened for any foreign sound of secrecy or creeping, and his eyes searched the darkness, for the music of evil was sounding in his head, and he was fierce and afraid. After he had probed the night with his senses, he went to the place by the side post where the pearl was buried, and he dug it up and brought it to his sleeping mat. And under his sleeping mat, he dug another little hole in the dirt floor and buried his pearl and covered it up again. Ooh, changed the location. And Juana, sitting by the first fire hole, watched him with questioning eyes. And when he had buried his pearl, she asked, "Who do you fear?" Kino searched for a true answer, and at last he said, "Everyone." And he could feel a shell of hardness drawing over him. After a while, they lay down together on the sleeping mat, and Juana did not put the baby in his box tonight, but cradled him on her arms and covered his face with her head shawl, and the last light went out of the embers in the fire hole. But Kino's brain burned, even during his cold, and a brooding hate was growing in him. Now the tension which had been growing in Juana boiled up to the surface, and her lips were thin. "This thing is evil," she cried harshly. "This pearl is like a sin. It will destroy us," and her voice rose shrilly. "Throw it away, Kino. Let us break it between stones. Let us bury it and forget the place. Let us throw it back into the sea. It has brought evil. Kino, my husband, it will destroy us." And in the firelight, her lips and her eyes were alive with her fear. But Kino's face was set, and his mind and his will were set. "This is our one chance," he said. "Our son must go to school. He must break out of the pot that holds us in." "It will destroy us all," Juana cried. "Even our son." "Hush," said Kino. "Do not speak any more. In the morning we will sell the pearl, and then the evil will be gone, and only the good remain. Now hush, my wife." His dark eyes scowled into the little fire, and for the first time he knew that his knife was still in his hands. And he raised the blade and looked at it, and saw a little line of blood on the steel. Did I skip it? Oh, crap. I missed a page, didn't I, guys?
I think so.
Sorry. Okay. But Kino's brain burned even during his, sleep, and he dreamed that Coyotitu could read, that one of his own people could tell him the truth of things. And in his dream, Coyotitu was reading from a book as large as a house, with letters as big as dogs, and the words galloped and played on the book. And then darkness spread over the page, and with the darkness came the music of evil again. And Kino stirred in his sleep, and when he stirred, Juana's eyes opened in the darkness, and then Kino awakened with the evil music pulsing in him, and he lay in the darkness with his ears alert. Then from the corner of the house came a sound, so soft that it might have been simply a thought, a little furtive movement, a touch of a foot on earth, the almost inaudible purr of controlled breathing. Kino held his breath to listen, and he knew that whatever dark thing was in the house was holding its breath too, to listen. For a time, no sound at all came from the corner of the brush house. Then Kino might have thought he had imagined the sound, but Juana's hand came creeping over him in warning, and then the sound came again, the whisper of a foot on dry earth, and the scratch of fingers in the soil. And now a wild fear surged in Kino's breast, and on the fear came rage, as it always did. Kino's hand crept into his breast where his knife hung on a string, and then he sprang like an angry cat, leaped, striking and spitting for the dark thing he knew was in the corner of the house. He felt cloth, struck at it with his knife and missed, and struck again and felt his knife go through cloth, and then his head crashed with lightning and exploded with pain. There was a soft scurry in the doorway and running steps for a moment, and then silence. Kino could feel warm blood running down from his forehead, and he could hear Juana calling to him, "Kino, Kino," and there was terror in her voice. Then coldness came over him as quickly as the rage had, and he said, "I am all right. The thing is gone." He groped his way back to the sleeping mat. Already, Juana was working at the fire. She uncovered an ember from the ashes and shredded little pieces of corn husk over it and blew a little flame into the corn husk so that a tiny light danced throughout the hut. And then from a secret place, Juana brought a little piece of consecrated candle and lighted it at the flame and set it upright on a fireplace stone. If you ever go to De Leon Foods or in the Hispanic section of grocery stores, they sell the consecrated candles, those like tall, skinny ones. It'll have like Jesus crucifixion on the side or like the Virgin Mary on the side. They smell really good and they're really inexpensive. Those are consecrated candles. Consecrated. They've been blessed by a priest. And she worked quickly, crooning as she moved about. She dipped the end of her head shawl in water and swabbed the blood from Kino's bruised forehead. "It is nothing," Kino said, but his eyes and his voice were hard and cold, and a brooding hate was growing in him. Now the tension, which had been growing in Juana, boiled up to the surface, so I'm going to kind of skim a little bit. "The thing is evil. This pearl is like a sin. It will destroy us." And go back to the bottom. "This is our chance. Our son must go to school. He must break out of the pot that holds us in. It will destroy us all, even our son." "Hush," said Kino. "Don't speak anymore. In the morning we will sell the pearl, and then the evil will be gone, and only the good remain. Now hush, my wife." His dark eyes scowled into the little fire, and for the first time he knew that his knife was still in his hands, and he raised the blade and looked at it and saw a little line of blood on the steel. For a moment he seemed about to wipe the blade on his trousers, but then he plunged the knife into the earth and so cleansed it. The distant roosters began to crow, and the air changed, and the dawn was coming. The wind of the morning ruffled the water of the estuary and whispered through the mangroves, and the little waves beat on the rubbly beach with an increased tempo. Kino raised the sleeping mat and dug up his pearl and put it in front of him and stared at it. And the beauty of the pearl winking and glimmering in the light of the little candle cozened his brain with its beauty. So lovely it was, so soft, and its own music came from it. Its music of promise and delight, its guarantee of the future, of comfort, of security. Its warm lucence promised a poultice against illness and a wall against insult. Poultice is like medicine. It closed a door on hunger, and as he stared at it, Kino's eyes softened and his face relaxed. He could see the little image of the consecrated candle reflected in the soft surface of the pearl, and he heard again in his ears the lovely music of the undersea, the tone of the diffused green light of the sea bottom. Juana, glancing secretly at him, saw him smile, and because they were in some way one thing and one purpose, she smiled with him, and they began this day with hope. Chapter 4. It is wonderful the way a little town keeps track of itself and of all its units. If every single man and woman, child and baby acts and conducts itself in a known pattern and breaks no walls and differs with no one and experiments in no way and is not sick and does not endanger the ease and peace of mind or steady and broken flow of the town, then that unit can disappear and never be heard of. But let one man step out of the regular thought or the known and trusted pattern, and the nerves of the townspeople ring with nervousness, and communication travels over the nerve lines of the town. Then every unit communicates to the whole. Thus, in La Paz, it was known in the early morning through the whole town that Kino was going to sell his pearl that day. It was known among the neighbors in the brush huts, among the Pearl fishermen. It was known among the Chinese grocery store owners. It was known in the church, for the altar boys whispered about it. Word of it crept in among the nuns. The beggars in front of the church spoke of it, for they would be there to take the tithe for the first fruits of the luck. Be there to take the tithe. The donation of the church is called the tithe. Some people even set it up to be an automatic deduction out of each paycheck. The little boys knew about it with excitement, but most of all, the pearl buyers knew about it. And when that day had come, in the offices of the pearl buyers, each man sat alone with his little black velvet tray, and each man rolled the pearls about with his fingertips and considered his part in the picture. It was supposed that the pearl buyers were individuals acting alone, bidding against one another for the pearls the fishermen brought in. And once it had been so, But this was a wasteful method, for often in the excitement of bidding for a fine pearl, too great a price had been paid to the fishermen. This was extravagant and not to be countenanced. Countenance. Whenever you see countenance, think facial expression. So that's like, this was extravagant, not to be countenanced. Like, you're not going to squint your eyes at me and try to get me to give you a better price. So see, this whole system's rigged, and he doesn't know any of this. Now there was only one pearl buyer with many hands, and the men who sat in their offices and waited for Kino knew what price they would offer, how high they would bid, and what method each one would use. And although these men would not profit beyond their salaries, there was excitement among the pearl buyers, for there was an excitement in the hunt. And if it be the man's function to break down a price, then he must take joy and satisfaction in breaking it as far down as possible. For every man in the world functions to the best of his ability, and no one does less than his best, no matter what he may think about it. Quite apart from any reward they might get, from any word of praise, from any promotion, a pearl buyer was a pearl buyer. And the best and happiest pearl buyers was he who bought for the lowest prices. The sun was hot yellow that morning, and it drew the moisture from the estuary and from the gulf and hung it in shimmering scarves in the air so that the air vibrated and vision was insubstantial. A vision hung in the air to the north of the city, the vision of a mountain that was over 200 miles away, and the high slopes of this mountain were swaddled with pines, and a great stone peak rose above the timberline. And the morning of this day, the canoes lay lined up on the beach. The fishermen did not go out to dive for pearls, for there would be too much happening, too many things to see when Kino went to sell the great pearl. In the brush houses by the shore, Kino's neighbors sat long over their breakfasts, and they spoke of what they would do if they had found the pearl. And one man said that he would give it as a present to the Holy Father in Rome, the Pope. Steinbeck loves to throw in Catholic. I don't know if he is necessarily throwing them under the bus, but he sure seems to reference Catholics a lot. Another said that he would buy masses for the souls of his families for 1,000 years. So the idea that you can buy a mass for a dead relative is what Steinbeck's saying about the Catholic Church. I can just go into a Catholic church and buy a mass for great grandma that died 20 years ago. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I would say that he's kind of saying that it's corrupt. Like, if you grease the right priest, you're going to get what you want. Does that make sense? Another thought he might take the money and distribute it among the poor of La Paz. And a fourth, so there's a Jesus reference, right? And a fourth thought of all the good things one could do with the money from the pearl, of all the charities, benefits, of all the rescues one could perform if one had money. All of the neighbors hoped that sudden wealth would not turn Kino's head, would not make a rich man of him, would not graft onto him the evil limbs of greed and hatred and coldness. For Kino was a well-liked man. It would be a shame if the pearl destroyed him. That good wife Juana, they said, and the beautiful baby Coyotito, and the others to come. What a pity it would be if the pearl should destroy them all. So not only is Juana predicting it, the neighbors, the friends are predicting it. Or they're hoping they're wrong, but they're still kind of predicting it. For Kino and Juana, this was the morning of mornings of their lives, comparable only to the day when the baby was born. This was to be the day from which all other days would take their arrangement. Thus they would say, it was 2 years before we sold the pearl, or it was 6 weeks after we sold the pearl. Juana, considering the matter, threw caution to the winds, and she dressed Coyotitu in the clothes she had prepared for his baptism, when there would be money for his baptism. And Juana combed and braided her hair, and tied the ends with 2 little bows of red ribbon, and she put on her marriage skirt and waist. The sun was quarter high when they were ready. Kino's ragged white clothes were clean at least, and this was the last day of his raggedness. For tomorrow, or even this afternoon, he would have new clothes. The neighbors, watching Kino's door through the crevices in their brush houses, were dressed and ready too. There was no self-consciousness about their joining Kino and Juana to go pearl selling. It was expected. It was a historic moment. They would be crazy if they didn't go. It would be almost a sign of unfriendship. Juana put on her head shawl carefully, and she draped one end under her right elbow and gathered it with her right hand so that a hammock hung under her arm. And in this little hammock, she placed Coyotito, propped up against the head shawl so that he could see everything and perhaps remember. Kino put on his large straw hat and felt it with his hand to see that it was properly placed, not on the back or side of his head, like a rash, unmarried, irresponsible man, and not flat as an elder would wear it, but tilted a little forward to show aggressiveness and seriousness and vigor. There is a great deal to be seen in the tilt of a hat on a man. Kino slipped his feet into his sandals and pulled the thongs up over his heels. The great pearl was wrapped in an old soft piece of deerskin and placed in a little leather bag, and the leather bag was in a pocket in Kino's shirt. He folded his blanket carefully and draped it in an arrow strip over his left shoulder, and now they were ready. So the blankets to Native American Mexicans are like a cultural thing. Like, you take your blanket with you. It's very colorful. It's handmade. They make them on the beaches. You can buy them. It's like a spiritual thing to have your blanket. Kino stepped with dignity out of the house, and Juana followed him, carrying Coyotito. And as they marched up the freshest washed alley toward the town, the neighbors joined them. The houses belched people, the doorways spewed out children. But because of the seriousness of the occasion, only one man walked with Kino, and that was his brother, Juan Tomas. Juan Tomas cautioned his brother, "You must be careful to see they do not cheat you," he said. And very careful, Kino agreed. "We do not know what prices are paid in other places," said Juan Tomas. "How can we know what is a fair price if we do not know what the pearl buyer gets for the pearl in another place?"